All right, let's finish this up then. So we've got the left-hand side buttons, those 6 done. Let's do the ones on the right. And again, the lowest and highest are going to be real simple because they're only going to be a couple lines long. The median and range won't be hard either. And well, none of the stuff that's left should be that difficult. So let's do sum next. And I'm going to call sum array elements. All right. And I got to write it. And up above at the top, we call this just the sum. Okay. So again, I'm going to write a for loop. And we've got that global variable called the sum plus equals and that's it, except we have to print it out. So I've just used a message box. So let me just grab this. This won't be a yes, no, it'll be another one that's just an okay. And again, this is information. Oops. And there is no need for that. That should be it. So we're looping through the array. We're adding each element of the 25, and we're putting it inside of the sum. We're adding to it. And then when we're all done and we've fallen out of that loop, we'll say the sum of all array elements is, and we should put in that sum. And the title on that should be sum of array elements. Now, you're all very trusting, but let me run it quick and double check and make sure it works. So new numbers, sum. The sum of the array elements is 1164. Get new numbers, do the sum again, 2489. Oh, I didn't clear it. See that? That's going to be a problem. Always good to keep running your program to clear it. So I'm going to come in here. First thing I'm going to come in and do is say is the sum equals 0. Okay? Reset it to 0 every time. So you're always sure that you're starting with a fresh accumulator. That's what you refer to the sum as. It's an accumulator. It's accumulating values. So I'm going to save this and try running it one more time. New numbers, sum, 1275. New numbers, sum, 1044. New numbers, sum, 1348. That looks pretty good. All right. All right. The next one's pretty easy too. And that's the average. Does anybody still need this? Anybody still keying this in? All right, so the next one's pretty easy, and that's the average. So we call the other one sum array elements. So I'm going to call this AVG array elements. Again, you can call it whatever you want. You can use the word average if you want to use that. It's no big thing. Now, there's a lot of ways that we could do this. What we want is the sum divided by 25. Would you agree with that? but we may have the sum, we may have already hit it, but we may not have the sum. Would you agree with that? So I'm going to call first sum array elements. I could check first to see if it was equal to 0. I could do that if I wanted to, but I'm just going to do it this way. And then I'm going to say the AVG, the average, is equal to sum, which I'm going to cast as a double, divided by modified dot, spell it right, modified dot length. And then I'm going to come back in. I'm just going to steal this. Put that here. Why doesn't it like this? Invalid expression term. The average equals. Oh, double what? Sum, the sum. All right, and now I want to say the average of all array elements is, and I want to change it to the AVG. This one I am going to format to 2 decimal places, so I'm going to make it F2. And this will say average. All right. So I'll leave that up for a minute. We've already got 2 of them done. Okay. And the highest and lowest, you already know how to do that. Let's see if that works. So again, new numbers, sum, it's 1118. So that should be 40 something. All right. So let's check average. Well, the sum of all elements, no.
Oh, because
there it is, because you're right, because I'm running that one first. You're right. Now, how do I keep from doing that? I'm asking you that question. How do I keep from doing that? Can somebody think of a way that you might be able to keep from doing that? Anybody?
Modify the sum array elements modifier and put the part where it binds the sum in a
Yeah, we could do that. That's a good thought. So we could take where we're actually doing the sum here, all right, or this message box, we could only show it if it was that. You see what I'm saying? Otherwise, we wouldn't show it. How about if we do this? How about if when we call sum of array elements, when we call it from here, okay, when we call it from here, the sum, and we, when we do this, so when we call it from the sum button, I'm going to just pass in true, okay, which means that I want to print this, and otherwise down below I'm going to pass in false, which means I don't want to print it. Does that make sense? So I'm going to pass in here true, and then in here I'll have to change this, so it'll take a Boolean. So bool, do I want to, and I'll call it print sum message box. Okay, that's what that's going to be. Does that make sense to everybody? Now, we didn't set it to false yet, but we will in just a minute. So now all I have to do is say this. I'm doing the sum regardless, but I want to do this only if it's that. So if that's true, I want to message box that. And if it's not true, I don't. Does that make sense to everybody? Now, are there other, of course there's other ways of doing it. Are there better ways? You come up with a better way, then change it. It's totally fine. But now when I call it from the average, and I call sum of array elements here, now I'm going to pass in false, which means I don't want to print it. So now I should print it. I should print it when I do the sum. I should not print that when I do the average. The other way is we could just leave it the way it is, and it'll print the sum and then the average. I mean, it depends. I mean, if that bothers you or doesn't bother you. But let's try it again. So new numbers, sum, 1584, average, 63.36. All right. Now, again, That's just the way that I did it. I'm not at all saying, well, you should always do it that way. You should do it the way that makes the most sense to you. All right? All right, so now we've got, does anybody still need this code? Anybody still working on this? All right. So we've got sum and we've got average done. Next we'll do lowest and we'll do highest. All right, and it's going to be almost the same routine. For lowest, what am I going to do? I'm going to call sort ascending, because when I call sort ascending, I know that the smallest element is going to be element 0. So I'm going to say the smallest of all array elements is, and it's just going to be modified 0 dot to string. Unless I screwed up, but let's see. Of course, I can't spell. I don't know why, but there. All right, and I'll change this to say smallest array, just array element. And you know what? Shouldn't we be good little boys and girls here? And shouldn't I call this find the lowest? And then come down here, do my private void find the lowest, and put that in there. All right. And while I'm at it, I'm just going to come down here and I'm going to double click on the highest button and I'm going to call find the highest, which again doesn't exist, but will in about 10 seconds. All right, so this will be find the highest. And I will sort it in descending order. And now it'll say the largest or highest, it doesn't matter, whichever you think sounds better. And this should say be singular. So it should say smallest array element or largest array element. Okay. Now I'm going to save it and try it. New numbers, ascending, descending, search. I'll look for 3. I see it's at the top. Yeah, it was found. I'll search again. I'll look for 4. I know that's not in there. Yep, that's all working. Exit. I don't want to exit. No. Sum, 1261. Average, 50.44. That sounds about right. The lowest should be 3 and the highest should be 95. So lowest, 3, highest, 95. Okay? The other thing too, just so you know, I was always taught the way that the program is, have each method be doing one thing. Now, you may or may not agree with this, but if you look up on the screen here, we didn't technically have to call sort descending here. If it was already in ascending order, for example, we could grab the last one instead of the first one. You see what I'm saying? So there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. So as of right now, we've got these 6 done and these 4 done. So what's left is the median and the range. And I don't remember how I found the median, so I'm going to cheat and look at my notes here. The median is the one in the middle. All right? Now, I've got 2 older brothers, a younger brother, and a younger sister. I'm the third of 5 kids. I always say that I'm the middle child. All right? Not everybody agrees with that. They said, no, if there were 6 of you, no. There's 2 above me and 2 below me. Does that make sense? To me, that's the middle. So when I look for the median, it's 0 through 24. I want the 13th element, which is element 12. That's the median. So I want to sort it into ascending order and then grab the 12th element. And that's it. So I'm going to call this find the median. which I'm going to write down below this. Now, one thing is, just so you know, I am finding the median, but if it's in ascending or descending order, all right, I would think that's the way you'd want to find the median, the one in the middle. But if I wanted to find the median of the original array, I could do that too. All right, I'm not really using that original to do anything, is what I'm telling you. So I'm going to call sort ascending. And after I do that, there's other stuff I could do. I'm just going to do a message box. Now, one thing about this, I'm going to make this I could just do that and put a 12 in there, correct? Totally, it'll work just fine. The problem is, listen to this if you would. What happens if I change the number up here and I decide that instead of 25, I want it to be something else? Do you understand what I'm saying? So you may not want to make that 12. So what I can do if I want to is I can come in here and do this. I can come in and create a variable, and I'll just make it an int. I'll make it, I'll make it an int. And I'll say median equals the length of the array divided by 2. The array now is 25. 25 divided by 12, I'm not going to convert anything. It's 12.5. It'll throw that 0.5 away. Does that make sense to everybody? And now I can just change this to median. Does that make sense to everyone? Could I have left it at 12? Yes. That's assuming that the size of the array will never change. All right. So let's save that and run it again. There's my numbers. I'm assuming all this stuff works, but let's just put it in ascending order. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. If I did it right, it should give me 44 on mine. And it says that it was 12. So that's because I'm saying the largest. Well, something's wrong in here. Maybe did I click the wrong button? No, let's take a look at what I did. Oh, that's not what I want. I want that element. So I want modified median. Sorry. I was just asking for the number 12. That should be correct. Let's see. So numbers, sort of ascending 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It should be 37. And it is. All right. And then the last thing to do is the range. Anybody have any wild ideas on how you do the range? Yes.
You can sort it and then print it with modified 0 and then modified bracket modified dot length.
Yes, -1.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can sort it in either direction. It doesn't matter. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call sort ascending. All right. And I'm going to put an int in here that says, you don't have to even do it this way. I'm making it a little harder maybe than it has to be. I'm going to say high value equals modified len -1. That should be the last value that's in the array. Int, and I'm going to say low value equals modified 0. And int range equals high value minus low value. Now, you might say, isn't that a little bit of overkill? I mean, did you really have to do that? The answer is no. But what I'm going to do is when I print this out, I'm going to use another message box, but rather than just printing out the range, I'm going to tell you what the high value and the low value were. You don't have to do that, but I'm going to do it. So I'm going to say the range of all elements was, and this should be correct now with range dot toString, but I'm going to say here plus \n with high value of, and that was high value, and low value of, and really I should say high value again, dot to string, and a low value of, and again, it'll now be low value dot to string. All right, and I'll just put this array element range, I don't know. All right, and I'll come right back to it, but let's just take a look and see if it works. So first I'm going to put in new numbers and sort them in ascending order. So the range should be 93 minus 11 in my case, which is 84. So range says 82. Well, because I did the wrong math in my head. So the range of the array elements is 82 with a high value of 93 and a low value of 11. So that's correct. So there it is. One thing I hope you're getting out of this is really the logic wasn't different whether you're using a console or whether you're using a Forms app. All right, the logic that we used to figure these things out was the same. I tweaked some stuff in here because it's more visual. All right, did we have to do it that way? Of course not. Anybody have any questions on this? If you do want a hard copy of it, just let me know a little later today. That's fine. I'll print you out one. I'll have it for you by tomorrow morning. All right. So we've done 3 programs. We did an array program, which was console. Then we did an array program, which was console, where we took the original console program and we modularized it. Now, finally, we've come in here and we have taken and GUIized basically what we did before. Now, when you look, there's 250 lines in here. And I really should put prologues, etc., before all of these things. There's hardly any comments in here. But you see, once you get on a roll, a lot of times it's real hard to comment. All right, and it just takes time. But be very leery of a place, because the first place I went to work for, this is what they said. I said, well, what about writing comments? Oh, don't worry, we do that at the end of our cycle. We have time in there for comments. No, you don't. Because we were behind the entire project anyway. And I remember even asking, and they were like, F the comments, was basically what I was told. So I learned real fast that if I was going to do something and I wanted to comment it right away. All right. Are there any questions on anything that we've done? Is there anything that we went over in this example that did not make sense to you? Again, this is your time to ask. All right, we're going to write one more, but before we do, I want to show you a couple things here. So I'm going to close this, and we're going to actually create one more app before we're done today, and it's the shortest one out of all the ones that we're doing today. All right, but before we do, let's see. There's a lot of these places online. This is jquery-az.com talking about an array list. This one is .NETPearls.com talking about an array list. Now, who cares? Why should you care? Well, again, the difference between an array and an array list is that an array, once you give it a size, you cannot change the size while the program is running. With an array list, you can change it while the program's running. All right. Now I wrote this as an array list as opposed to just a regular list. And I will tell you that I did run into a problem when I was doing it. So I Googled it, and you would not believe the number of people who said, never ever use an array list. Just use a list, not an array list. But again, you know, maybe I told you about this, but I was watching a tape about a month ago where the guy said opinions are like butts. Everybody has one and they all smell. All right, the same kind of thing. Everybody's got an opinion. I'm sure I could go out there and find people who say that they use array lists all the time and they work just fine. All right, in this last example that we do, all I wanted to show was some of the basic functionality in an array list. Did you hear me? So in other words, I've got sort, I've got add, I used a for each loop, etc. But this isn't designed for you to be able to add stuff and remove stuff. I just didn't put the functionality in. All right. I tell you, I didn't have the time, but I didn't feel like doing it. All right. So what I'd like you to do, please, because I want us to finish this today, and if we do, tomorrow and Friday will be labs. All right. Friday, the first thing we will do, though, for the first 10 minutes or so, is to go over the written test for Chapter 8. But I'm planning on having the next 2 days be labs. If you are behind, please try to catch up. If you've turned in nothing, please try to turn in something this weekend so I can give you some points. All right. If you're behind, try to catch up. On Monday of next week, then, I'll plan. We have class Monday, correct? No, Monday's when we don't have class. That's President's Day. So Tuesday of next week, I'll give you a pretest like I've been doing, and I'll give you some time to work on it. Then Wednesday of next week, a week from today, if I'm doing my math right, the 17th will be your next test, and it will be solely on Chapter 8. All right, after 8, we're going to do 9, 10, and 11 together, and you will have one test on 9, 10, and 11. Don't let that throw you, because a lot of the stuff that's in there we've already had. All right, but we're sitting really well. If possible, you know, I'm hoping in a few weeks we're going to be getting into the object-oriented stuff. We're going to do that until our break. Then after the break, we're going to work on databases. And that's going to be basically it for the class. All right? Okay. So that said, I'm coming in here. Everything is closed. And just so you know, when I added that reference before, this is what it did. Look on the, it's kind of hard for you probably to see this, but there's a thing up here that says references, and now there's one that says Microsoft Visual Basic that was not in there before. All right? Okay. So I'm going to right mouse click on my solution. I'm going to choose add. I'm going to choose new project. It is going to be a console app. That's what I did, was a console app. All right. I'd like you to do the same here. And I just call this array list. So go in there, create a brand new project, make it a console app, and call it array list. All right. I'm going to give you all the code for this. I did everything right inside of main. And I just used right line statements. Oh, I did put in one. I put in one other method. But there's going to be some duplicative code in here. Why? Because I did a little bit, then I tested it and ran it, did a little bit more, tested it and ran it, etc. And that's the way I'm going to show it to you too. So again, it's called array list. I'm going to click create. I'm going to immediately up at the top of my screen type in using static system.console, and I'm going to get rid of that line because I don't need it. All right. Some of this is going to look pretty doggone familiar to you. So I'm going to start by declare and initialize. I had one constant, program constant, and it's const int len equals 25. And that's, again, the array length. Then I wanted to declare and initialize the program variables. And I have 3 of them. The first one says here, array list. Don't worry if you get an error here. Array list numbers equals new array list of size len. Now, what you should notice is you get an error here because the system doesn't know where array list is. It doesn't know anything about it. But look on the screen, please. You may have done this already. If I put my mouse here, it says, are you missing a reference? Yes, we are. So I click here by the light bulb, and it says, do you want to add using systems collection? I don't think it'll matter, but I chose the one with array list in it. All right, so what doesn't it like here? Close. New array list len. Oh, you don't need the word new. Sorry. Oh, it still doesn't like something. Now, since I put that using statement in, oh, I didn't put it in. There you go. So I want to put that in. So using system.collections.ArrayList. Well, would that be enough? Is collections enough? It says this cannot be used like a method. Should that be a bracket? I don't think it was a bracket. Nope, that ain't what the problem is. We'll get it in just a minute. No, just leave it like that. So now I should be able to get rid of this. Okay, and I've got array list numbers equals, you do need the word new array list. There we go. What that does, an array list, you know, if you said, well, what's the difference between the way an array looks in memory and the way an array list looks in memory? I don't know, because I don't know what memory looks like. All right, but it's holding 25 locations right now. And if I fill those up, it'll give me 25 more. Does that make sense? Remember, when you create an array list, you need to have parentheses. And if the array list is going to be empty at the beginning, you need paren. I think it defaults then to 16, but I could be wrong. All right, so we've got that. And that, again, is our array list. All right, so that's the first thing. Next, I had int sum equals 0. Oops. And that was the sum of elements. And finally, I had double AVG equals 0.0. And that was the average of the elements. Okay? You'll notice, as always, those are green because we have not yet written those routines. Or, I'm sorry, we have not yet used those variables. We will use them in just a minute. Just like before, I want to seed the rand. So I said random, rand equals new random. Nothing new there. We've talked about that already. All right. Now, next, and I did put some comments in here, so fill the array list with 100 random numbers between 1 and 100. All right, got our old for loop. Now, I want you to see this. Please look up on the screen. Okay? We could say in here len, the length. We could do that. All right? We could say in there 25, but there's no length property to this. So if I say numbers, dot, you'll notice there's no length. It's alphabetized, but if I keep going down, there's nothing that says length. So how do you know? Well, I'm looking through here. There's nothing that says size, but there is one that says count. So you use count to figure out how many elements you have in an array list. All right. All right. Now, when we did this before, don't type this because I'm going to get an error. When we did this before, we typed in something like this. The name of the array, bracket, LCV, bracket, equals, like what? Rand dot next 100. All right. And wow, it's not giving me any errors, but I think it will later if I try to use it. All right. So you don't do it like that. What you do instead, because I don't want to, it's an array list and I'm treating it like it's an array. So I'm going to say numbers dot, and notice what's in here. All right, my array list is numbers. I don't know why there it is. There's something called add. All right, and what do I want to add? Well, rand dot next 100. That should fill that up with 25 random numbers between 1 and 100. All right. So we used add in there is what you used. And when you're using a data structure like an array, you use the methods available to an array. With an array list, you use the ones that are available in an array list. All right. So I put a comment in here that said, print out array contents, original array contents. I'm sorry, array list contents. Okay, now here's where it changes a little bit. Okay, so what I can do in here, and I'm going to write a different routine for this because I wrote this, otherwise you're going to have to put in this for loop 3 or 4 times. So I'm just going to write another routine down here. Okay, and I'm just going to, don't worry if we got errors or whatever, they're going to be fixed in a minute. Static, void, and I just called it print array list. Why? Because that's what it is. It's an array list. All right, and I'm going to pass in the array list, and it was called numbers, so I just kept the same name, numbers. Okay. So what I want to do in here is I want to write a for loop, but before I do, I'm going to have string, like we did before, output, or out str, I think we called it, equals nothing, the empty string. And now, rather than using a for loop, which we can do, we're going to use that for each that we talked about. All right? So I'm going to say here for each, int number in numbers, out str plus equals the current number plus a blank space. Okay, and then when we're all done, we're just going to do a write line of out str. Now look at that, see if you can wrap your heads around it and see if it makes sense to you. Because it's doing with the same kind of stuff we've done before. It's iterating or working its way through the array list. It's grabbing a number and it's adding it to this output string and then putting in a blank space. Another number and a blank space. Now we'll know real fast whether or not it worked because I'm going to come back up here and I'm going to say, I'm going to put in a write line that says the array list in original order. Okay. And a \n. And then I'm going to call print array list. And I've got to pass it in the name of my array list, which is numbers. All right. We're going to do a couple more operations on it. We're going to do a sort, and then we're going to do a reverse, and then we'll look at how to do a sum and how to do an average. All right. And we've got about 15 minutes. I think we can actually do it during this time. Let's see what we've got so far. Oh, kind of be nice to reset my project here. Well, it says the array list in original order. There's something it doesn't like. Okay. Have to figure out what that is. I'm not that worried about it. If nothing else, we'll figure that out tomorrow. All right. But I know this works because that's what I did before. Let's see, static void, print array list number, string out string. For each, int number of numbers, out string plus equals number plus, that's fine. Write line, that's fine too. So, called it up here. Write line, then call print list. Don't know what the problem is. We'll figure it out though. I'm just telling you, we will figure it out. All right? All right. So, now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to sort the array. Sort the array list, I should say. Sort array list in ascending order and printout. All right. And how do I do that? Well, numbers, dot, notice there's a sort method. So dot sort. And then the array list in ascending order should be like this. And then you may have already guessed what I'm going to do. All right, but I'm going to say that in descending order. And I'm going to say numbers dot reverse. And that will be in descending order. Now, I'm not sure, like I said, why it's not printing that out. I'll have to look at that. It was yesterday, to my knowledge. But I'll look at it and see if I can figure out what the problem is. Because right now, all it's going to show is the 3 lines. It'll say the original array, and then the array in ascending, and the array in descending. So it's not printing anything. We'll have to fix that, of course. All right? So I'll look at it. But my question to you is the stuff that's in here so far, the add, the sort, and the reverse, okay? The add is very similar to what we did when we threw things into the list box. But there we did the name of the list box .items.add. Now we're adding it to our array list. The sort's pretty much the same, all right? The reverse is pretty much the same. And I'm just going to do sum and average. We could do the same kind of thing. Here we sorted it. So we should be able to come in there and grab and print out an element. But I'll tell you what, array lists are hinky. They work differently than arrays do. All right. So I'm just going to do the sum and the average, and we're going to call it a period then. So I'm going to say calculate sum and average of array list and print out. All right. So I'm going to do another for each loop. For each number int number in, that might be what my error is down here. No, I do have int. That's not the error then. For int number in numbers, sum plus equal number. And that's pretty slick. All right. And I'd have to say here the array list sum is plus sum. Do we call it sum up here? Called it sum and average, yeah, so that should be fine. Sum. All right. And then when we're done, what's the average? Well, you already know this. Average equals, I'm going to cast the sum to a double divided by the name of the array list dot count. And I don't need to call print array list anymore. And I can say the array list average is. All right, again, this should be sum dot toString. This would be average dot toString, and I'll do it as an F2. All right. Why it is giving me that error, I'm not sure, but it's already 11:42. I'll try to quickly debug it, but I don't know what the problem is. And it's the same junk that it gave me yesterday, 0 and not a number. So I'll have to figure out what the problem in here is. I know I've got it to work, but I think I did was I copied over an earlier version that didn't work. So I'll figure out what it is, and I'll give it to you tomorrow. All right. So when you come in here tomorrow, it's a short program. It's one page front and back. So I'll just make out a copy for everybody. That one you don't have to key in. You will not have any homework. To my knowledge, you will not have any tests on array lists. I'm giving it to you now for completeness, so you've at least been introduced to the concept. We will probably work with either lists or array lists or both when we get into chapter 12, we start talking about object-oriented programming. All right. So like I said, I'll fix this. I don't know offhand what the problem is, but I'll fix it. I'm not worried about it. All right. That was a lot. That's the most I probably lectured in one period in a long time. I don't typically like to do that. You have a 3-hour and 50-minute period and lecture about 3 of the hours. All right. But that's how important this stuff is. Arrays are fundamental. They are used in virtually any and every programming language. Some programming languages like for example, PHP and JavaScript allow you to mix different kinds of elements in an array. All right. C# does not. Okay. But, so you might say, that's fine. Then why the hell are you, why are you showing us array lists, for example? All right. And I just want to show you that unlike an array, if you are using an array list, so here we put in all those values, right? We added those numbers. I can come in here if I want, and I can say numbers dot add, and I can put in hello. So I can put in different data types and I don't get an error. So you can mix data types in an array list where you cannot mix data types in a regular array. So if I say that, and if you noticed in here, we didn't say what type it was. The system inferred the type we were putting in it based on the values that we put in it. But it doesn't care. So you can put other kinds of values in there if you so desire. All right. So again, that was a lot. So tomorrow will be lab all period. I'm going to do my best to fix this by then. All right. But the whole period, if I get it done, great. I'll just put a copy on everybody's desk and maybe give you a minute or two of what I did to fix it. The rest of the period will be lab. Friday, first thing. So be here on time, please, Friday. We will go over the test for Chapter 8, the written test, as a class. All right. The rest of the period will be lab. No class Monday for President's Day. Tuesday, I'll give you a pretest. If you don't want to take the pretest, you're not hurting my feelings any, but I will give you a couple hours to work on it. All right, and I will go over it around 10 or so. And I'm going to try to set it up so there's only one problem on it. I think on your next test, there's 2 or 3 problems. I don't remember. I haven't looked at it for a while. And then Wednesday, 1 week from today, will be your next test on just on Chapter 8. If we get all that done, then on Thursday, I will quickly go over the test with you, and I will lecture on 9, 10, and 11. All right. I'm not going to lecture on a Thursday and then Friday we go over the written test. We won't do that. I'll wait. We'll do it the following week. But that's everything. What I'm telling you is that will get us about halfway through the book. So we'll have done section 1 and section 2. Then the next section is, in my opinion, the hardest section of the book, the object-oriented programming section. There's some stuff in there that I'm going to go over with you that I can almost guarantee is going to make 0 sense. Even after I give you an example, it still will make 0 sense. And not only that, the explanation won't be fantastic because you're explaining really complex topics. But what I plan on doing is going back to like our payroll program, and we will make what's called a payroll object. So or maybe an employee object. So every employee will have like a first name, a last name, a social security number, an hours worked, and an hourly rate. But then we'll extend that. We'll say, no, we've got other kinds of employees. So we'll add that stuff, and that'll allow us to bring in the object-oriented stuff. Once we get that working, all right, that'll be almost break time. If not break time, then we're going to go into the database stuff. All right, probably we will go over all of 17, 18, 19, and 20, and we will talk a little bit about 21 through 24, but you won't have any tests on that or anything. But I'd like to go over that for completeness. I'm not going to go over 25. You can read that if you want. There's some good stuff in there on enhancing a user interface. And I'm not going to go over 26. I have done lectures on those, on the PowerPoints for them. If you go out to the YouTube channel, if you're interested, you can find those. And if you're not interested, not a problem. All right, so that will make up basically the rest of your semester. All right, questions? All right, that's all I've got for today then.